Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Anton Warrenchuk in Baltimore. The Obama administration is considering launching airstrikes to help defend the al-Maliki government against the rising strength of the Islamic State of Iraq and al-Shams. Iranian President Rouhani said that Iran, quote, will apply all its efforts on the international and regional levels to confront terrorism in Baghdad. And the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Iranian forces have been deployed to support the Iraqi government. Reuters also quoted a senior Iranian official saying that Iran is willing to cooperate with the U.S. in dealing with the situation in Iraq. Meanwhile, UN human rights official Navi Pillay expressed concern with reports of the violence against civilians. The Iraqi military has also reportedly retaken Tikrit, but ISIS has vowed to continue towards Baghdad. Joining us now to discuss this is Sabah Alnasseri. Sabah was born in Basra, Iraq, and teaches Middle East politics and economy at the Political Science Department at York University in Toronto. Thanks for joining us, Sabah.
Good to be with you again, Anton.
So the most senior Shia cleric in Iraq, the Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani, has called for Iraqis to fill the gaps within the security forces and to fight back against ISIS. How do you think that this is going to affect the ongoing situation?
Well, it's an excellent question, and I have a few observations on that. The first one is Sistani calls for young Iraqi to join the army is a sign of the total collapse of the security apparatus of the states. In any other country, the whole government would have resigned by now. Not so in Iraq, not so with al-Maliki. As someone who actually, his whole election platform was organized on law and order. That's the first thing. The second thing is the fact that al-Sistani makes the call after the parliament rejected the emergency law, which al-Maliki wanted to push through on Thursday, but there was no quorum for that, is a dangerous development because Sistani claims state authority, assuming the function of the parliament and the executive. The third observation is the fact that al-Sistani calls on young Iraqi to defend the religious cities and so on, give this conflict a sectarian tone, a problem which caused the conflict in the first place. And it's no wonder that, let's say, Sunni preacher didn't make the same call. So it gives it a sectarian note and accelerated the conflict and escalated rather than de-escalating the conflict. A dangerous development because it could end up in all-out war, and the human cost will be enormously high. Third, the fact that the people in Mosul or in Tikrit or in Fallujah and Ramadi didn't resist. The fact that the soldiers actually peacefully abandoned their position after they were told by these groups if they leave their position they will not be harmed, which is the case, says something about the ISIS, which contradicts all the presentation in the media and so on, constructing them as a terrorist group. And Anton, if you remember, I didn't use the word terrorist in the last interview because I don't want to be part of the making of these absolute evils. I think we should look at the ISIS concretely to see which major component are the constitutive element of this group and what's their agenda, and then look at the US and why they acted the way they have acted until now.
Well, then let's embark on that point exactly. What is the composition of ISIS? What is their ideological as well as their religious ideology? What is their political ideology? Where have the various members of these rebel forces comes from? I mean, the most that I've seen reported thus far is that a portion of ISIS comes from former Iraqi commanders and intelligence forces, I believe,
Correct.
preceding the fall of Saddam.
Correct. If we look at the group, we'll see it is constituted out of different heterogeneous elements. Some of them are Iraqi nationalists. They could be ex-Ba'athist, not necessarily pro-Saddam, but ex-Ba'athist from the Iraqi army, general or officers of the intelligence. Some of them are there just like in the Iraqi army for employment. And the doctrine of such group is once you join this group, they are paid monthly. And I think these payments come from regional powers. Most of these young people who join these groups are unemployed. They go there for employment, but also, according to this doctrine, whatever they occupy is open for plunder. So a source of also wealth accumulation. A third force, you can see, it's a pan-Islamist. If you look at some of the fighters, you will see they come from all over the Arab world, but also beyond the Arab world, from Asia, Chechnya, and so on. And a minority of Wahhabi jihadists with a much more ideologically oriented form of war, not necessarily a nationalism in the sense of Iraqi nationalism or Syrian nationalism. And I would say there's also part of the group are those who are predominantly interested in the conflict in Syria and opening up a new front in Iraq, occupying cities and utilizing resources. As I said the last time, they utilize all these resources to extend the civil war in Syria, because I think their main focus is the conflict in Syria, not only with the Assad government, but also with other opposition forces within Syria. So if you look at this heterogeneous character of the movement, and if we look at how the people in Iraq and different cities, and even how the soldiers reacted, it tells us a different story, not of a homogeneous terrorist group, which al-Maliki and Obama would want us to believe.
Well, in that case, I'm wondering, in the last interview I did with you about Iraq, you mentioned repeatedly that these kinds of political affiliations and whatnot are relative and contingent, basically based on the short-term political interests of any groups and whatever conflict they may be embroiled in. Do you think that there's any likelihood that ISIS will be recognized or become involved with some sort of strategic partnership with any state actors or any non-state actors within the region?
Right. This is an excellent question. And we talked about the last interview that there are different agendas of different forces involved, from Turkey, Kurdistan, Saudi Arabia, and US. And I think my sense is that this group is fulfilling some of the objective of these agendas in Iraq. Because, as you know, the US intelligence, the Turkish intelligence, the Kurdish intelligence, they must have known about the mobilization and the attack on Iran. It's simply unbelievable that almost 1,500 fighters, they gathered and attacked and occupied cities, and everybody was taken by surprise.
You're right. I mean, the Wall Street Journal, just reported recently that the U.S. had been conducting drones, if not drone strikes, at least drone surveillance in Iraq for quite a while now. I mean, and I agree with your point. It seems like in terms of everyone knew that ISIS was quite a fierce fighting force and powerful fighting force, and we've heard Senator John McCain and Lindsey Graham, I think, have lambasted the Obama administration for not acting upon this, but like you said, I mean, those comments strike me as opportunist mostly, because it just seems really inconceivable that the extent of the surveillance apparatus of the United States and as well with the fact that ISIS has been on everyone's radar for months, if not the past year, since it was the major prison outbreaks in Iraq, that everyone knew that ISIS was a force to be contended with.
Right, and I have my suspicion here, and I talked the last time in our last interview about, let's say, the agenda of Turkey, of Kurds, of other Shiite forces in Iraq against al-Maliki and Saudi and so on. But let me go back to the US, because I think this is very important here. If you observe the last few weeks and months, al-Maliki was actually begging the US to support him militarily and to fasten the deliveries of weaponaries and so on to Iraq. But the Obama administration was hesitant up until today to support him. I think my sense is that the Obama administration, since 2010, and especially in November, December 2010, when the Kurdish, the so-called Sunni parties and Shiite parties agreed in the so-called Erbil agreement in Erbil city in Kurdistan to have an inclusive representative government, all political forces in Iraq, to which al-Maliki agreed, and he was supported by the U.S. ambassador to be a minister president, although he actually lost the election to al-Alawi, to al-Iraqi list. Now al-Maliki didn't keep his word. He started attacking his opponents, arresting and so-called Sunni politicians, escalating the conflict with the Kurds, facing peaceful demands of the people in the northwestern provinces of Iraq with violence, using a sectarian discourse, etc. I think the Obama administration utilizes the ISIS to pressure al-Maliki to have a different approach now vis-a-vis the so-called, they call the Sunni provinces and the Kurds and so on, and include them not only politically in the process, but equally important in the security apparatus of the state, which is up until now under the control of al-Maliki and his cliques and clans. So I think the Obama administration is extremely upset with the behavior of al-Maliki, and I think they utilize the ISS in a way to push al-Maliki to take huge concession. The best scenario would be that al-Maliki wouldn't assume a third term. Someone else from his party would be an alternative with a much more inclusive political solution. That would be the most optimistic scenario. The second scenario would be al-Maliki, who until now refused to resign by all peaceful means, he might utilize this conflict in all-out war precisely to stay in power and to make it impossible for other political forces to have part in this institutional, economic, political sharing formula, which the U.S. actually prefer. So that's what I think the approach of the Obama administration is around, and that's why I think they are hesitant to support him, fearing that he would use this weapon against his opponent rather than so-called terrorists, what they call terrorists, and utilize it to pressure the al-Maliki to make concession, and only then they might be willing to support the Iraqi army with some logistical or military support.
Well, I'm wondering how much of the Obama administration's calculus also has to deal with Iran and Saudi Arabia. I mean, Iraq has been a battleground between the two states for since the occupation.
Right.
I mean, do you think that the U.S. is staying out to avoid becoming embroiled in a kind of Iran-Saudi proxy war?
A possible scenario, yes. I think the Bush administration is very much interested in a political solution to the conflict of the nuclear program in Iran. And the problem was, and still is, Saudi Arabia, because the Saudis feared any reconciliation between the U.S. and Iran would be at their cost. So I think what the Obama administration is trying to push for in Iraq is to have an alternative politician. Could be a Shiite, somebody like Alawi, but who has a much more reconciliatory approach to the Gulf monarchies and Turkey and Iran. An alternative political force that is able to de-escalate the conflict, and maybe organize some regional international conference, bringing all these different power to the negotiating table and solve problems peacefully. So if this would would happen, I think then even the conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia would be de-escalated. But I think al-Maliki and his government, I think they are a hindrance in this scenario.
Okay, Sabah Alnasseri, professor of political science at York University. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, Anton.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.